Hello class, I'm going to walk you through how to solve question 17. This question is fun, it's a little bit of a mystery. We're going to try to find which baby belongs to which parent. So first, let's review the blood types. So, blood type A has to have big I, little a, or genotype big I, little I. Blood type B has to have big IB, or the genotype big IB and little I. Blood type AB is an example of codominance, so it has to have IA and IB. For codominance, both blood types, or alleles A and B, will be expressed. So then for blood type O, this has to have the genotype II, which are the two recessive alleles. Now, let's take a look at the positive and negatives. This is an example of complete dominance. So the positive comes from the genotype big D, or big D, little d. Because the positive is the dominant, because the big D is dominant, it has to have one D present, and for complete dominance, that one allele will have complete control of the phenotype. So for the negative allele, since it's an example of complete dominance, for it to be present, or the phenotype, it would have to have two little d's in the genotype. All right, so when solving this problem, I would like to take a look at the babies first and try to match them to the parents. If we did it parents and then matched it to the babies, we'd have to find out all the possible offsprings that the parents could produce, so we'd have to make a lot of Punnett squares. If we go babies to parents, we don't have to make any Punnett squares. So, let's take a look. Baby A is O positive, baby B is AB negative, and baby C is B negative. So, I would pick baby B first. The reason why I pick baby B is because the genotype for baby B can only be one option. To get blood type AB, they have to have an IA and an IB. To get the negative, they would have to have two little d's. So, let's take a closer look. Baby B is blood type AB negative. So the genotype is IA, IB, little d, little d. So let's take a look at the Johnstones. The mom has blood type A positive, and the dad has blood type A negative. Can this baby get an I allele from this couple? Yeah. Can this baby get a B, IB allele from this couple? No. So let's look at the Johnsons. The mom has blood type B negative, so the baby can get the B allele from the mom, but can it get the IA allele from the dad? No, because the dad is blood type O. So this baby would have to come from the Johnstons, where the mom has blood type A positive and the dad has blood type B positive. So let's try to figure out the mom's genotype. So she's A positive, so her genotype would be IA, because she's positive, she has to have one big D. Because the baby is negative, the baby has to get a little d from the mom and the dad, so we know that she will have a little d allele. Or the mom could be the blood type IA and little I. So the baby would get the allele IA from mom and one of the d's, one of the little d's from mom. So the mom could be either one of these genotypes. Now let's take a look at dad. He is blood type B negative. So he would have to have the genotype IB dad's B positive. So he'd have to have one big D, and because the baby is blood type negative, he would have to have one little d. The dad could also be IB and little I. Again, because he's positive, he'd have to have a capital D, and since the baby's negative, he'd have to get a little d from dad. So, the baby can get his D allele from dad here or here, and the IB allele from here, here, or here. Now, let's take a look at baby C. Baby C has the blood type B negative. So, let's take a look. Can the Johnstones have baby C? No, because the mom has an A plus and the dad has an A negative. Baby B will never be able to get the IB allele. So let's take a step back and actually figure out the genotype for baby B, baby C. So the baby could have the IB, because he's negative, he has to have two little d's, or he could have IB and little I, because the little I is the recessive allele. And again, he has to have two little d's. So, yes, like we said, the Johnstons are already taken. They have baby B. So the Johnstones could not have baby C because neither mom or dad has the IB allele. Therefore, we know that baby C has to come from the Johnsons. So let's take a little deeper look. The mom has blood type B negative. So her genotype is going to be IB, and little d, or IB, little I, and D. Again, she has the two little d's because she's negative. So, the dad, let's take a little look at him. He has the blood type B positive. O positive. So the dad would have to have little I, and he could have the allele big D, little d, or big D, big D. So, let's take a look at the baby. The baby is negative, so we know that this cannot be the dad's blood type because the baby has to get a little d from dad. So, the baby's going to get one of his little d's from dad, and the baby's going to get an I from dad because the dad is O, so the dad cannot have an IB, so we can rule out the top genotype from the baby. So, now, what would the baby get from the mom? The baby would have to get an IB from mom and a D from mom. All right, now let's take a look. All we have left is baby A. Baby A is blood type O positive. So this baby would have to have little I, big D, or the genotype little I, big D, little d. From process of elimination, we know that this baby has to come from the Johnstones. So, these parents are both A positive. So they must have to have a little I in both. So let's take a look at mom. Mom, we said, is A positive. So she's going to have an IA and a big D. She can also have, or she has to have a little I since the baby is O positive. And since the baby's positive, she can have another big D. Or she can be the genotype IA, little I, big D, and little d. So now let's take a look at Dad. Dad is A negative. So he can have the genotype IA, and again he has to have a little I. So he has to be heterozygous because the baby has 2 recessive little i's, and because he's negative, he has to have the D, the 2 little d's. So the baby would have to get 1 little d from Dad and 1 I from Dad. So we can rule out the top genotype because the dad doesn't have a big D to give. Now, let's go back to the mom. She's going to give a little I to the baby and a big D. So the baby can get this I from mom, or this I from mom, and possibly this D, or this D. All right, guys, I hope that helped.